Okay, yeah. So my brother Jack, um, he passed away 3 years ago, and by taking his life. We were living in Australia at the time. Both of us had moved over there when we were teenagers, and my brother came a year after me, and he had suffered with bouts of depression and anxiety through his life, but seemingly actually at the time that he did take his life was when from the outside he looked like he was doing very well. He was at his happiest, and things had really sort of fallen into place for him in the last sort of 6 months prior to him leaving us, in terms of him being the first one in our family to go to uni, and he was studying chemical engineering, and had started seeing a girl, had his hobbies, and was running his own small business in Australia as well. So, I know that my family and I were his biggest cheerleaders, and finally, like, really happy and relaxed, kind of seeing that his life was all falling into place, and he'd been through a long period of time with chronic back pain. He had a bulging disc that was, like severe sciatica, and the bulging disc was like, it was huge, and he was on a large cocktail of medications. He was on 4 or 5 different types of medications, sleeping tablets, antidepressants, opiate-based medication as well. So he was on a hefty cocktail of drugs, which if he came off of, he would go into psychosis, which he did twice. And that was because he was at that stage where he no longer felt like he had depression, or he didn't feel as though he was suffering. And he also no longer suffered with his back pain at that time as well. So he wanted to come off of his medication, and then just try and live a normal life. And yeah, unfortunately, like, he was a slave to the medication for a while in the last few months of his life. And so for us, it came as a shock. I mean, like for anyone, but a complete shock because of where he was at that time of his life. Yeah, like his he was sorry, hilarious, very laid back. Um, he was a joker. He was also very sensitive. Um, he we said this. My dad had told this joke at his funeral, that he was the kind of guy that would walk an old lady to her car with her and hold her bag of shopping, only to steal lemons out of her bag when he helped her to the car. Like, he he was hilarious, and he was always kind of the life and soul of the party, um, and just a beautiful person. He wasn't a materialistic guy. He liked the simple things in life, the simple pleasures in life, um, and he was a daddy's boy. Hmm. Yeah, so it was my 30th birthday coming up, and I'd organised a boat party with my friends and and I had stopped receiving messages from my brother over that weekend, talking about planning it, and that was kind of always a sign that something was wrong. And so I'd sent him the last message on a Monday, and then on a Tuesday I was at work, and I he was like going round and round and round in my head all the time, wondering if he was okay or what was going on. And I went to go check my phone to message him again and call him, and I had a missed call from someone that I didn't know, and so I called them back. I took the phone call outside the shop, and then the person on the other end of the phone was crying and asked if I was Jack's sister, and I said yeah, and then he said Jack's dead. Um, like, oh, it's just insane. And then I was on the phone to the paramedic there for a while, and I had a friend come and pick me up from work, and we drove over to his house. And the whole time we were driving there, I was thinking to myself, but kind of bargaining, I suppose, that there could be a way out, that he might be okay, that it might have been wrong, that he'd be at the hospital, that they might be able to revive him, that everything was going to be okay, that he just needed his family around him, and at worst, you know, he might be unable to walk for a while, might need physio or anything like that. And you know, it was just kind of like planning all of the ways that we could make it okay and then get him the help that he needed. And it's crazy how they say like your life flashes before your eyes, but that happened, but also just ahead of time, like of all of the ways that we'd be able to save him and all the changes we could make in the world to get him back on track. And finally, like, maybe this was the wake up call that everybody needed to really like yeah, pull in together and then get him where he needed to be. And then obviously when I got there to his house, yeah, I mean, like he was dead. Oh, like, you still think it's wrong, and you still think that it's like a dream, and I think you're just praying that it's wrong. But also at the same time, I really didn't like how there was all these strangers at his house, and that it was me that needed to be there. You know, I thought like being his sister, um, that I'd be the one that would be able to bring him back to life. Like I still kept believing that I could bring him back. Um, but it's just like sincere pain. And I just remember, I just remember like obeying everybody as well, like all this information coming at me, and like the police and the paramedics asking questions, and I kept thinking like, if I answer their questions, if I just be a good girl and I listen to what they have to say, and then I answer them correctly and all of that kind of thing, then they'll just let me get to him, and then I can do whatever it is that I need to do to get him back. But honestly, like it's absolutely harrowing, like complete terror throughout your entire body, and then it obviously then escalated in having to call home, and then yeah, give the news to my dad. So I called home. I tried my dad's mobile a few times, and there was no answer. And so I called the house phone, and I just said, "Dad," and he said, "What's wrong, Becky Boo?" And I just said, "Dad," again. And then my dad just said, "No," and I said, "Yes." And then he just he just kept saying, "No, no, 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 no." And I just said, "Dad, you just need to get on the next flight and come over to Australia," because yeah, my dad was in the UK. Um, and that was it. And I just sat in silence after that until my dad landed. The next day, he got on the next flight. So I never told him how he passed or anything like that. I still don't know how he knew. I think I just think that there's just things that you know, like he said no, and I said yeah, and that was it. So Jack had said times before, yeah, like when he was going through difficult times, he was very open. This is the other thing as well. Like, I know that for every person that is suffering with mental health issues and depression, things like that, like it isn't always as silent as what it's made out to be. Because my brother was very open about how he felt, and he was very open about his depression or anxiety and back pain and everything. So he would discuss with us and say like, I feel really suicidal, like I don't want to be here, and things like that. And so over the course of his life, like from being in his late teens up until 28, yeah, he would openly discuss that with us. But yeah, like I said before, in the last sort of 6 months of him really turning things around after his back operations, it was something that we would always be nervous about. like learned behavior, I suppose, when he was feeling depressed. Of course, like I would always be the first, oh no, 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 we have to make sure he's okay, like because he was high risk, because he would openly discuss it. Sometimes we would think as well, like, but if someone says it so much, surely they won't do it, because the people that talk about it don't do it. And also, that's not the truth. That's not the case either. So the weeks after that, we had we had some friends and family come over from the UK, and we just kind of had an open house. So my house was always full, um, like 20 people at a time mostly, but it was mainly just shock. And it's crazy how humans adapt as well, because my brother was moved into a morgue, and we were waiting for family to come, and we didn't know at the time, like, if we were going to fly him back to the UK or stay in Australia. And it took us a while to kind of make our minds up. And so we had almost 2 weeks with him, where we were visiting him in the morgue. And every day, like, we would shoot up out of bed and get down to the morgue as soon as we possibly could, and we would just lie there with him and cuddle him, kiss him, just talk to him, um, and it kind of became this new relationship that we had between the three of us. My dad raised us from when we were kids, so the three of us were really, really close. Um, so yeah, we would spend as much time with him as we possibly could. And then my brother was moved to the funeral parlour, and so again we would go and spend a lot of time with him there. So that was a really strange time, that was just full of a lot of shock, but it kind of kept us in this positive state as well. We would to keep our heads in check as much as we possibly could to see him. It's kind of like this weird like prize, like you're allowed to see him in this way, and so you adapt and you just take what you can. And so we still had this hope that we could cling on to, but it was after he after the funeral, and like obviously then like cremating someone that you love is like, like, yeah, like imagining them going into a furnace, and then that's it. But then we had him in a pot of ashes. Um, and even then, like, you adapt to that. And we would strap him in the car and put the seatbelt on him, and we would drive him around, and we'd take him to friggin' lunch and things like that with us, and go on. We followed his. He had a road trip that he did in Australia with his best friends, and so he had a big journal, and so my dad and I took his journal, and we followed his road trip around Australia, and we took Jack with us everywhere in the back of the car. And occasionally we would take like tiny bits of his ashes and then sprinkle them in some of the places to, yeah, like leave a part of his legacy and his memories behind there. But the real pain, I guess, kicked in after the funeral, I'd say, in terms of like the physical pain, and when the hope had gone of having any part of him left. Oh, it's like what you would see in a movie. I mean, I had no idea that a human was ever able to feel that kind of pain. It's silent, and it's like it's it's so primal. It's like the most difficult purge that it can happen, and it's just so much physical pain, and it's like pure helplessness, powerlessness, despair, and you're feeling the pain of it's not just your pain, it's their pain as well. So much pain for them, just thinking of not knowing where they are, that they were like that, and he was going through that in his last moments, feeling the pain my dad was carrying as well. That was his son, his friends, even like there's a guilt that comes with the pain of how much pain everybody else is feeling, wanting to kind of help them and remove that pain for them. And yeah, it's unbearable pain. I don't believe that it's because he wanted to die. It's kind of like, my feeling and my belief is that you want to die without dying, if that makes sense. You want the freedom where you've exhausted all other avenues, and that there is no other way out. That I wonder often if there's an unconscious knowing that perhaps there is something for them after they die. I wonder that myself, did he believe in those last moments that he was going somewhere else? Because each of us will never really know until we've been there in that space. But I don't believe it's death that he was looking for. I just believe it was freedom from the pain that he was experiencing. And I know now he has that freedom. And I know now that there's no such thing as death. But in terms of why he did it, I think that he really lived by that proverb of like trying and trying and trying again. You get back up and you try again. Like, I have never seen anyone pick themselves back up and dust themselves off as many times as my brother. And I know it took him so much strength every time to do that. And I believe that when it had got to a point where, from an outsider's point of view, that he was really happy, and perhaps, you know, he could realize that, but it wasn't actually how he was feeling. And, you know, when you've got to that point where you kind of think, well, this is so drastically different to where I was last year, but if this still isn't bringing me happiness, and this still isn't giving me the freedom that last year I would have hoped it would have, you know, he was in a place where he would have dreamt to have been in when he was at his worst. And then to have got to that point, but still not have those feelings and that motivation behind it, I mean, I can only imagine that then you think, well, what else do I have to look forward to? I mean, after Jack passed away, I had an innate knowing that he was still around me. In the first 6 months after his passing, I had so many experiences of hearing him, seeing him, feeling him around, not just in the sense of feeling his energy or his presence around, but actually being physically cuddled, or having hands pressed into my body, or having my face stroked and things like that. You know, it was like I couldn't explain it. And I believe that was because I was in such a present state of being completely aware, and just from the shock. But then later down the track to where I am now, with a lot of the healing methods and everything that I've used, I communicate with him a lot more freely. But also with all of the studying and everything I've done, you know, there's a lot now with modern science, bridging modern science and spirituality together. And as humans, like, we're not physical, we're just all big balls of energy that are just emitting different frequencies, and energy can't be created or destroyed, it can only be transformed. I moved back. I moved back to the UK with my dad, and you know, I was very suicidal myself. Um, the guilt that I was holding on to was unbearable, and I really needed to I couldn't understand why my dad and I were still alive. You know, the three of us all grew up together in essence, and so I I also was only just 30. I didn't want to continue my life living in that much pain. I didn't understand why my dad and I would stick around. I just thought that it would make complete sense to just call it quits and say, it's been a good run, but, you know, we need to go and look after Jack. We need to go be with him now and take care of him. And I would always say to my dad, like, please, 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 Dad, can we go? Like, can we please go? I just need to go and be with Jack. Nothing else matters. It doesn't matter anymore. My life, I had a lovely life. I just want to go be with Jack. And my dad would always say, like, just Becky, please, just give it a couple of more months. And then I would say, okay. And then I would wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and storm in his room when he was sleeping. And I'd just be like, Dad, law of averages, like, you're going to die before me, and you're going to see Jack before me. And that means that I'm going to be on my own. And I can't bear it. I'm like, please, can we just go be with Jack? And he would always say, Becky, please, just give it some more time. And then, so I was experiencing like awful PTSD, um, hallucinations, seizures, blackouts, fits of rage, self-harm, suicidal ideation, suicidal fantasies, anger. And it was like there had so much energy in my body I had to get rid of, and I just didn't know how to do it. And so I took the obvious path and I went to grief counselling, and it was so dismal. You know, I would just sit on this sofa with various grief counsellors that would counsel me through the 5 stages of grief, and I'd be so perplexed and just think, this doesn't make any sense. I don't understand. And I'd say, like, are you experienced with suicide loss? And some of them would say yes, and some would say no. And I was finding that, like, consciously, like, looping around my conscious mind all the time, I just was never making any fundamental changes. And so everything was kind of prolonging with my side effects and symptoms of losing my brother. And I kind of thought I'd invented it. I Googled spiritual counselling, because I knew my brother was still around, you know, with all of these experiences, the experiences that I was having with him. And it didn't really go hand in hand with grief counselling that I was having. So I found a spiritual counsellor, and then they completely changed my course of direction. And yeah, it just catapulted like this whole healing journey that I've been on since then. And honestly, it's like the best thing I've ever done. And I owe my life now to spiritual healing and holistic art forms. Yeah, I mean, I've kind of always stuck to my own lane. And, you know, for me, I really had to listen to my gut and what was true to me. After the 6 months sort of passed with all the shock and everything of my brother's passing, you kind of go back into like 3D dimensional like world. And so with work or responsibilities and things like that, so you can kind of get quite reconditioned or programmed into normal day life, where you might have thought the experiences that you were having with spirit didn't really happen. Perhaps you were latching onto something because you were really yearning or longing for them. And so that's quite a common time where a lot of us step away from believing in spirit or connecting to spirit. But for me, it was like, no, I know, so I'm sticking to this. And yeah, of course, like what I gained from my own therapy and spiritual healing was just completely mind blowing. And for what I know now to what I know then, is knowledge and wisdom and an experience that, you know, is able to help thousands of people. And for me, I couldn't help my brother, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to help other people.